Hi, I'm Jeff Merrill. I want to welcome you to True Texas History. And I also want to wish you a Merry Christmas. Today is December 23rd, and on this day, back in 1927, Texas experienced what is known as the Great Santa Claus Bank Robbery. Now, in that robbery, you had the main robber. Actually, there were four men that participated in the whole episode. The main robber dressed up in a Santa Claus outfit. In fact, apparently it was so convincing, some of the kids started following him, and he was kind of ignoring them, kind of, get away, kid, get away, get away. Went in the bank, demanded the money. And things went haywire. Of course, things had gone haywire even before that. Now, to go ahead and head on into the background, this whole robbery had been planned in nearby Wichita Falls, and by four men. And two of the men had attempted bank robberies before and had been thrown into prison. And then they were released within a year by Governor Miriam Ferguson. One of the problems with the Ferguson administration is that they tended to allow the criminals back on the streets rather quickly. And this angered many of the people of Texas, and they didn't like it. They did not like the crime sprees. Keep in mind, this was the same time period as you had Bonnie and Clyde and some of the other outlaw types running around. And at that time, in 1927, you were dealing with 3 to 4 banks being robbed daily in Texas. And this infuriated the Bankers Association so much so, they offered people a $5,000 reward for people who shot bank robbers during a robbery. And this was a major incentive and a factor in the Great Santa Claus Bank Robbery. Now, as the four criminals gathered together to go ahead and do the robbery, the safecracker came down sick, so they had to find someone to fill in. They went ahead and took a stolen car from Wichita Falls to Cisco. And there in Cisco, they proceeded to go on with the robbery. Now, with the robbery, the bank was essentially a storefront operation, and one fellow went ahead and demanded the cash. Another one went into the vault, and while the robbery was underway, a mother and child and her daughter came into the bank. Of course, the robbers threatened to shoot her. She went ahead and left the bank. She went out into the alley, screamed for help. The police chief was nearby. The police chief heard her. The police chief responded. And when one of the robbers came out of the vault, he saw people out in the street, so he went ahead and opened fire, and fire was returned. And many of the people in Cisco were armed. You don't go mess around with Texas. Even back then, there was a lot of gunfire between the locals and the bank robbers, because the locals were determined to go ahead and catch them. Now, the bank robbers went ahead and took some hostages. Now, most of the hostages got away, but they ended up holding on to 2 little girls. They go to the original getaway car, discover, hey, there's not much gas, we need another car. So they go down the street and essentially commandeer a car off a 14-year-old. But the 14-year-old who had been driving the car, because keep in mind that back in those days you drove when you had the ability to drive, and not necessarily because you had a state-sponsored driver's license. It was based on your ability, not on permission. And he was smart enough to go ahead and take the keys. So the robbers were trying to start the car, couldn't get the car that they commandeered, which was an Oldsmobile, started, so they go back to the original car, only made it barely out of town. They released the 2 hostages, and they ended up getting caught. Now, the story doesn't end there. On investigating the whole bank scene, they found in upwards of 200 rounds that had been fired into the bank and the walls and everything. So, I mean, it was quite a shootout there on the streets of Cisco there. And although the bank robbery occurred on December 23rd, the main bank robber had, let's see, that was the old Marshall Ratliff. He was trying to get out of the whole deal, and he figured he was going to once again beat the rap by acting insane. And he had acted so insane and was trying to go for the insanity plea to the degree that the local jailer had to take him to the bathroom and feed him and do everything for him. And this was part of his act as he was going on. And it got to be November of 1928, and the locals were furious that this guy was going to go on, try to get an insanity plea, and they weren't able to get something to stick in terms of him murdering people as part of the bank robbery. So a judge went ahead and issued orders to pick him up for stealing cars and some other charges. And a crowd started developing around the jail, and essentially the local law enforcement was trying to keep him out. They overpowered the jailer, went in, and took him out to the nearest utility pole, which was behind a theater in the town, and went ahead and hung him. They considered justice was moving too slowly. Because, I mean, even in the initial shootout, there were 2 police officers killed, and by the time everything was over, I believe 6 people had died overall, and that was too much for the town of Cisco. But that's what happened on this day, December 23rd, 1927, the great Santa Claus bank robbery of Cisco, Texas. Cisco, Texas is also the hometown where the Hilton Hotel chain started. How about that? Well, if I don't see you until the new year, Happy New Year. Thank you for tuning in. Feel free to give it a thumbs up. We'll talk to you later. And until next time, vaya con Dios, my friends. Goodbye.